The U.S. dollar is in danger, fam. This goes right along with what Keith was talking about, kind of touching on the food with the food not bombs. So there's the U.S. dollar is in danger, and of course this has been a long time coming. But the UN is warning about a food insecurity, a really high food insecurity. So I summed up the news this morning with a few things that we're going to talk about. So the UN is warning of a highest risk of food insecurity since World War II, and France's Macron also said the same thing, and he said it was because of the military involvement with Ukraine. And simultaneously, of course, Putin stated that the European payments for gas supplies must be switched ASAP to Russian rubles. They said, saying that the West has destroyed confidence in their currency. So we're going to go into that a little bit more deeply here. This article by RT talks about the spiking fertilizer prices sparking fear of global hunger. World on the brink of worst food insecurity since World War II, and the UN said this. The latest sanctions imposed on Russia and Belarus have sent global prices for fertilizer, as we said weeks ago, fam, soaring to an all-time high. The two countries are major exporters of potash, critical for the global agricultural industry, which is already reeling from the pandemic-related disruptions. Again, this is just added on top of what we were already talking about. So they talk about how fertilizers prices surged nearly 10% last week versus the previous week. And this is according to Green Market's North American Fertilizer Price Index, the highest price point ever recorded. The index shows current prices are at 40% higher than a month ago, before Russia's military operation in Ukraine began. According to CRU, a UK-based commodity consultancy, prices for raw materials that make up the crop nutrient commodity markets, such as ammonia, nitrogen, potash, urea, phosphates, sulfates, and nitrates, saw a 30% surge since the beginning of the year, topping the levels reached during the 2008 financial crisis. Russia and Belarus are major exporters of several critical fertilizer compounds, including urea and potash. And this is the NOLA urea is trading at a 34-year high of $880 per U.S. ton compared to the $182 recorded in 2020. Prices are up 60% since the West imposed these sanctions. So spiking prices for fertilizer have also been exacerbated by higher costs of natural gas and a vital feedstock in producing nitrogen-based fertilizer. Energy prices have been soaring amid European Union's plans to cut out reliance on Russian oil and gas supplies and bans imposed by the U.S. and a couple of other countries. Also, the situation is aggravated by China's ban on fertilizer exports, primarily nitrogen and phosphates. And that measure expires in June and was implemented to limit the rise in domestic food prices. So all of that is happening. And of course, there's also Canada's having issues with the Pacific Railways, which is supposed to worsen shortages, putting additional pressure on the global logistic chains. Canada's Nutrien, the world's biggest fertilizer producer, said it could weather a freight shutdown lasting a few days, but a longer shutdown would force it to consider slowing potash production. And of course, that the UN is warning that acute food insecurity was plaguing dozens of countries spanning Latin America, Central Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia due to conflict and erratic environmental conditions. And they said that Ukraine has only compounded a catastrophe on top of a catastrophe. And so this is just going to be insane right now, fam.
Yeah. Well, that's not even just a labor. That's not a labor dispute. That's a full-on strike by the Teamsters in Canada that are shutting it down. So that to add insult to injury, what's already going on with the issues we have, and this is something we talked about for a long time. All these disputes, all these sanctions, all this money, all these blockading of one import or export of another, America's going to lose at the end of the day, right? Who's going to have to pay for it? The poor, the middle class, if there's anything left, whether it be financially or more people ending out in the streets. But what do you think this is going to do, ladies and gentlemen, to the price of our agriculture in the United States if we have these blockades with Russia and Belarus, who, quite frankly, fam, they're holding all the cards because they're holding on to the majority of the fertilizer that we need. 40% of the fertilizer we get in the United States comes from these two countries, okay? Yeah. For factory farmings and big farming and whatnot. Without it, we're screwed. So when you see Biden out there and Jen Psaki saying all this stuff and all these stupid people, we got to go anti-Putin and stuff, they don't give a damn because it's not going to affect them. It's going to affect us. It's going to affect the people on the streets, and people need to wake up to this right away while you have your little Ukrainian flag in your bio.
Yeah, and the fact that, I mean, we're seeing a price increase from $100 and something to $800 and something, that is insane in some of these products. I mean, that is insane. That is ridiculous. That should warn you. And of course, to add insult to injury, because of a lot of people have been protesting Macron over his, neoliberalism for a while now. His solution, of course, is to introduce food vouchers. And this is from Hi India. The French president has warned of a global food crisis resulting from military actions in Ukraine. I mean, they know that their actions are causing this, right? Mm-hmm. And Emmanuel Macron reiterated his promise to issue struggling families with food vouchers amid sharp rises in fuel and raw materials costs caused by, as he claimed, the ongoing Russian military offensive in Ukraine. In an interview with France Blau radio on Tuesday, Macron said the world is facing a global food crisis, emphasizing that France has advised fellow European countries to come up with a, quote, concerted response to this issue. And of course, he is facing an election on April 10th and said his government has already taken a number of measures, including energy caps and fuel discounts to support the country's residents. That's not going to be nearly enough, by the way. And the grain deficit has been looming. We've talked about how Ukraine and Russia are this whole issue is exacerbating everything. They say that Ukraine and Russia are true barns for the international food supply. I want to introduce food vouchers to help the most modest households and the middle classes to face these additional costs. He added that he would also want his compatriots to buy locally and to buy French products. Macron has mulled the idea of food vouchers since December 2020, now making it one of his campaign promises. Interesting, he didn't talk about that during the quote-unquote pandemic. However, the details of the food support program are yet to be revealed. It is not yet known what amount these vouchers would be for, which products they would cover, how exactly they'd be distributed, and who would be eligible for them. So this is their solution. It's not really going to be enough. I mean, if what happens with the UN is saying is going to happen here. And of course, like we said, they're the world's largest suppliers of these crops. And this is according to the Conference on Trade and Development from the United Nations. They represent 53% of global trade in sunflower oil and seeds and 27% in wheat. The European Central Bank earlier said that the food inflation is expected to remain high throughout 2022 due to high commodity prices and extraordinary increases in gas and electricity prices. So they also warned that all countries will be inevitably impacted by this crisis, and it will impact the most vulnerable and developing countries, putting pressure on the poorest households. I mean, this is stuff we already knew was going to happen, fam. We've been talking about this. When it comes to these sanctions, not only are they going to hurt, obviously, some of the Russian people and Ukrainian people especially, but they're going to hurt the people in European nations, the working class people in America. And I don't think these people in the West understand what that means yet. Well, I don't think they're taking it seriously.
Keith McHenry said, plain and simple, fam, like the gas prices alone, right? You're talking about Europe, they're going to get hit hard, especially with the Nord Stream 2 getting, nixed. And now all that gas that Russia has, all that oil is going to China and the Belt and Road Initiative at a good price. They'll pay for it, no problem. But we sit here and, I wonder what Oz feels too as well, is that we're sitting here in this situation. We see this stuff happening over and over again. And it's clearly at fault of the ruling class, whatnot, the decisions that they make. At what point do we continue to take this? Are we going to just continue to take this? I mean, that's why I had to ask that question to Keith. His suggestion is starting, parallel kind of societies we talk about with Steve and stuff. But how long, fam? Because, I got to be honest with you. It does blow my mind that it seems like the acceleration and the bad choices, they're constantly made over and over and over again. And whoever's running things, it seems like they don't give a damn about what terrible leadership they give us, because we're going to take it no matter what.
Right. So the progressives right now are focused on the judge appointee right now. That's what they're talking about. It is absolute insanity. And they're like, it's representative. It's a representative woman of color, blah, blah, blah. That's what because they're still comfortable enough. And I think, a lot of these people who talk about being, Marxist or being anarchists are none of those things. They're just, they're cosplay, and they have still the ability to ignore really what's happening and pretend that, some virtue signal of electing somebody representative is a big deal right now as all of this is happening. And that's just a giant distraction that they're using, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's a judge. It doesn't matter, who's president at this point. It doesn't matter who your representatives are. They're not in control. The national security state apparatus is in control, and they're mad at Biden now, a lot of them, because he hasn't been as aggressive as they would like him to be. And I think we're seeing that also be obvious when it comes to the Hunter Biden situation. Now that they've admitted, the New York Times admitted that the laptop thing was real, of course, not really taking accountability whatsoever for the fact that so many people were censored and taken down over even just mentioning it. They just took what Howard Lens Media gave them a strike, and then they appealed it, and they, fortunately for them, got the strike off. But it's still that sort of thing where they're getting away with this, and these people, a lot of these people were like, oh, they thought it was conspiracy theory by the right, by Trump, and all of that. Of course, they were wrong on that. They've been wrong on every single thing. Yet, people still continue to watch these people. And it's crazy to me that they do, but I think it's a matter of cognitive dissonance. They don't want to see that what's really happening, because what's really happening, the reality that we're living in, is extremely heavy. It's extremely negative. And I think a lot of people just don't want to deal with that reality.
It's funny because I was thinking today, I was like laughing, chuckling, and me and Steve were talking. I'm like, if the show was probably 3-4 years ago, probably Fee might have had something in the doc to talk about the nomination of the first woman of color, right? Black woman, I believe, to be elected to the Supreme Court. But I'm like, no, not today, because she understands, like, what difference does it make? They're not in charge, right? This is when you have a corrupt system. Who cares who's a judge, whatnot? But I believe, too, fam, correct me if I'm wrong, that this particular nomination has every single police union endorsement out there.
Yeah.
From what I heard as well. Well, what are the progressives on that? You know what I'm saying?
They ignore whatever destroys their narrative. Yeah, exactly. It's not good. It's an approved status quo nomination. It's not, everything else is theater. The Republicans are like, no.
She's friendly to pedophiles.
The Republicans are like, like using their whole theater to show this sort of, oh my gosh, we're Republicans or Democrats, blah, blah, blah. But it's all theater. Like, really, what's really happening is this. Like, what's really happening is we're about to have a massive food shortage. The dollar is sinking. The West is going to feel, for once, a portion of what other people have been going through. Because my main man, as I am accused, Vladimir Putin, said in a statement to TASS, it's Russian media, he declared that the U.S. and EU have declared in principles a real breach of their obligations to Russia. And I'm going to read exactly what he says. But first, let's talk about the gas prices in Europe, because the gas prices in Europe have exceeded $1,350 after Putin ordered to accept payment for gas in rubles. Okay, earlier this Wednesday, today, the Russian president said that Russia would refuse to accept payments for natural gas supplies in, quote, compromised currencies. And as of today, the price of gas in Europe exceeded $13.50 per 1,000 cubic meters after the order of Russian President Vladimir Putin to supply gas to unfriendly countries only for rubles, according to the London ICE Exchange. The April future price at the futures price at the TTF hub in the Netherlands rose to 1,353 per 1,000 cubic meters, or 118.75 euros per MWH based on the current euro/dollar exchange rate. And so this is, since the beginning of trading, the prices of gas have increased by almost 20.3%. And of course, Vladimir Putin said Russia would refuse to accept these compromised currency payments, including dollars and euros, and would move the payments to rubles. He stressed that future change in gas contracts with unfriendly countries will only affect the currency of the payment. It will be changed to the Russian ruble. So they're still going to do it, but it's just going to be Russian rubles instead. Yeah. He also instructed the government to issue a corresponding directive to Gazprom to amend existing contracts. The finance ministry and the central bank within a week should determine the procedure for the purchase of rubles on the domestic market by importers of Russian gas. And there was a summary from the talk he had with the TASS. And he said, with its decision to freeze Russian international assets, the West has actually declared default on Moscow and destroyed the reliability of its currencies. Russian President Vladimir Putin said Wednesday at a meeting with his country's government this week. Wednesday, he said, quote, over the last few weeks, as you know, various Western countries have made illegitimate decisions on the so-called freezing of Russian assets. And the collective West has actually drawn a line under the reliability of their currencies, destroying confidence in those currencies. So he added that both the United States and the European Union have declared in principle a real breach of their obligations to Russia. And now everyone knows it. They suspected it. And now everyone knows that obligations in dollars and euros may not be fulfilled, is what he said. So there is a video of him talking a little bit about this. We can go ahead and play it.
We'll transition to charging supplies for natural gas and other raw materials in Russian rubles when dealing with unfriendly countries. Russia, of course, will continue supplying natural gas and will respect all the obligations and the pricing under the contracts that we have signed. Unlike some of our colleagues, we treasure our reputation as a reliable supplier and a reliable partner. This only concerns the currency in which we will transact these payments. We will transition to rubles.
By the way, fam, rubles is one of the only currencies that's still backed in gold. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's an important point to make. But I was going to say, he could technically just say, no, we're not going to follow these contracts because you guys have breached your contracts. But they're following through with the contracts in spite of the actions by the West, right? And also the only thing they're changing is the rubles. And that's a very smart move, in my opinion. That's a very Russian chess player type of move, because you're not, outright saying, oh, we're just not going to give you what you want. We're going to give it to you, but we're going to change the currency. And in that way, you're sort of impacting them negatively in a different way. You're showing them too that you're not joking, you're stepping your foot down. And that's something that I think, the West is highly irritated about. It also shows the shift that we've been talking about here, like having the audacity by so many on the West, Anthony Blinken and Jen Psaki, the State Department, the Victoria Nulands, all of these people are probably like, oh my God, how dare he? Like, how dare he do this to us? But the petrodollar is sinking, it's sunk already. And Vladimir Putin is simply going along with that. And of course, we talked about, potentially Saudi Arabia putting the yuan over the dollar. We've talked about the exchange that happened between India and Russia for gas and rupees for rubles and that sort of thing. And this is a signal of more of what's to come, fam.
Yeah. It totally is. And that's why I posed the question to Keith, what do we do? I posed the question to you and Oz, how long are we going to take this to? Because this seems like the controlled demolition of the United States empire. And at the end of the day, that means all the citizens within that empire, those are the ones who are going to be starving and suffering, especially all these people, who are reliant on the American dollar. They don't have anything diversified. And that's why you saw a lot of big companies like BlackRock, Blackstone, buy up all these properties. All the people who had money were buying property, property. Everybody's like, oh my God, during COVID, the housing market's going to crash. No, it didn't. It expanded. because a lot of these bigger entities started mopping up everything out there right now. And that's what's going to happen. We are cutting our nose despite our face. If we think we can cut off Russia and China and all these, we're sanctioning China, fam, because they're not huffing and puffing against Russia at our behest. Modi told us to go scratch. Like, no, we're not going to do this anymore. So we are really, really hurting ourselves. And I shouldn't say we, the ruling class is hurting us. And if we don't take the car away from them, if we don't take the keys away from them, fam, and that's what we need to do. We need to take the keys away from them. Sorry, you can't drive this car anymore. Can't do it. We're going to have to drive it ourselves. If we don't do that anytime soon, we are doomed. We are doomed.
Yeah, and there are neocons right now that want to actually go into a full-out war.
Of course they do.
And they don't care what that means. Like, they don't, like, they're psychopaths. They don't understand that means like the destruction of
and the mentality, fam, of the military huffing and puffing and stuff. We were in the streets the other day, right, in Vegas. We asked somebody who said he's a fighter pilot, and that's actually what he does for a living. He was out having a good time in Vegas. He was on leave. And we said, well, we hope you don't have to go over there to that neck of the woods and do anything. He goes, we would wipe the ground with him. And I just looked at him and I said, and I don't give a damn if he was military or not. I said, you think we can go over to Putin's backyards and mess with them with their MiGs when they can fire missiles from their own airspace while they're to go, bomb targets in the Ukraine? I'm like, this is Russia's backyard. You got some sick mentality over here to think that you can just go over there and wipe the floor with another superpower that has just as many bombs as us. The mentality just blows my mind here. People need to get out of their G.I. Joe friggin' mentality. This is real shit you're dealing here. Real lives, and enough is enough. They're
not bluffing. Russia's not bluffing
at all.
And that's a lot of these idiots think they are. And they're going to be extremely disappointed. And we're all going to be screwed if they continue this way. And another marker in the shift is, of course, Venezuela. Venezuela coming into play a lot these days. So according to the Russia's ambassador to Venezuela, Sergei Melik Bagdasarov, Venezuela and Russia will continue building their military cooperation, and the two nations are working on connecting Venezuela to the MIR payment system, which is the Russian system for electronic bank transfers. And that is also verified, if you didn't believe me, directly from the Russian side. The AP had to verify this, that Venezuela's leader pledges military cooperation with Russia. In Caracas, Venezuela, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro pledged a powerful military cooperation with Russia following high-level discussions between officials on Wednesday, a day after diplomats from the U.S. and several other nations gathered to discuss steps towards a negotiated solution to the South American country's protracted crisis. So that is happening as well simultaneously. And he said, we have reviewed the powerful military cooperation, and we have ratified the path of a powerful military cooperation between Russia and Venezuela for the defense of peace, of sovereignty, and the defense of territorial integrity, Maduro said during a news conference. We are going to increase all the preparation, training, cooperation plans with a military power to the world, such as Russia. This came about a month after Maduro and Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke by phone about cooperation between their countries amid talks of possible Russian troop deployment to Venezuela. So if the United States thought that by going to Venezuela and trying to play nice with them was going to make Venezuela forget the attempted and failed coup, the push of Juan Guaido, the attainment of their refineries and gold, and of course the jailing of Alex Saab and everything they've done since, they were wrong. And we said as much. Venezuela was always going to stand with Russia in those terms. They were just not going to be. They were going to do business with whoever because, like they need the money, and this is now a position that they have where they have the upper hand. So I think I think this just shows like everybody's kind of like, it's kind of like the U.S. is kind of like the person nobody wants to date right now. Like, you're crazy. I don't want to deal with your shit right now. Like,
she may look pretty, but she's crazy on the inside. And Sam, they validified, right? They validified. Okay, take it easy. They validified Maduro by meeting with him not too long ago. And the title of that AP article says Venezuela's leader. It doesn't say Venezuela's de facto leader or Venezuela's authoritarian. They are now solidifying the fact that, Nicolas Maduro is the leader of that country. And of course, they're going to play ball with Russia. We knew this. Anybody who's paying attention to the situation knew that Venezuela is going to go, to hell with Russia. Let's work with the United States. No, they got the United States to verify, solidify that Nicolas Maduro is their leader. And fam, by the way, when you do the Nicolas Maduro, you do it in the accent. I think from now on, if you read anything from Putin, you should do it in a Putin accent. That's just my personal opinion.
First of all, there's no validified. That's not a word. You do like the crazies. So I just had to point that out. I think you meant validated, but
no, validify is a Brooklyn term we use over there. Oh my God.
Now everything that you make up is a Brooklyn term. Jesus Christ.
You know, I can't understand why you can't respect my culture. It's just terrible.
I know, you're a very marginalized man.